The mansion was silent, far too silent for a house that once echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the soft hum of warmth. When Liana Verdon, a billionaire whose life was carved from steel, sacrifice, and long loneliness, stepped through her tall glass doors that afternoon without informing a single soul she'd be coming home early, she expected nothing more than emptiness. Instead, she froze mid-step, her heart slamming against her ribs as she witnessed something she could hardly believe. Down the hallway, bathed in soft daylight cutting through massive windows, the janitor, a quiet, humble man named Rowan Hale, was kneeling on the polished floor with her 3 deaf triplets, all 5 years old, each of them laughing soundlessly yet glowing with joy as he guided their small hands through signs she never knew they understood so clearly. It was as if her children had awakened, and she was the outsider watching from the shadows. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that change hearts, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandma's book so we can bring more stories like this to you. Liana stood frozen, gripping her handbag so tightly her knuckles whitened. For the first time in months, her business-hardened face softened. Her children, Mira, Soren, and Lila, were born without hearing, and though she tried everything therapists had recommended, they rarely responded to her attempts to communicate. Their father had abandoned them soon after their diagnosis, leaving Liana overwhelmed and drowning in guilt she never expressed. She buried herself in work, believing money could compensate for her absence. Yet here, in her own house, a janitor she barely noticed seemed to understand the 3 beating hearts she loved more than anything but couldn't connect with. Rowan, completely unaware she was watching, continued showing the children how to sign simple sentences. His hands moved gently, patiently, his expressions exaggerated enough to help them follow along. The children mimicked him with excited eagerness, their faces glowing in pure delight. Liana's throat tightened. She had never seen them this alive, not even in therapy sessions that cost more than Rowan's yearly salary. When Rowan finally noticed her, he jolted up, wiping his hands nervously on his uniform. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with misunderstanding. Liana wasn't angry, she was confused, overwhelmed, but Rowan, expecting to be reprimanded, bowed his head and apologized quickly, explaining that he had studied sign language years ago for his younger sister, who had passed away. Since starting work at the mansion, he had noticed the children's loneliness and simply wanted to help. Liana felt something inside her shatter gently, like thin glass cracking under warmth instead of pressure. She asked him to continue, her voice barely above a whisper. The children tugged at Rowan's sleeves with innocent trust, begging him silently to keep teaching them. Liana stepped closer, sinking onto the floor beside her children, and for the first time, she signed a word correctly. Myra's eyes widened with surprise, then happiness. Liana's heart almost collapsed under the weight of it. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet janitor slowly became the bridge between a mother and her children. Rowan never overstepped, never sought attention. He simply appeared when needed, teaching the triplets new signs, helping them learn to express their feelings, routines, joys, and fears. For the first time in her life, Liana learned that language wasn't just sound, it was connection, presence, patience. Rowan showed her that, yet the world outside her mansion began to whisper. A billionaire spending time with a janitor? Allowing him around her children daily? Liana's executive board even suggested firing him for the family's image. But Liana had already changed. She had witnessed something priceless, love that wasn't tied to status, patience that couldn't be bought, and healing that came from the most unexpected soul. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the mansion windows, the triplets performed a small hand sign story for their mother, something Rowan had helped them prepare. They signed how much they loved her, how proud they were to learn, and how happy they felt. Liana couldn't hold back her tears. When the children finished, they ran to her, wrapping their arms around her neck. Liana's tears wet their small shoulders as Rowan stood quietly near the doorway, almost invisible to the world, yet to her, he was now impossible not to see. She walked to him slowly and told him that he had given her something no amount of money could buy. She asked him why he had dedicated so much of his heart to her children. Rowan's voice cracked as he told her that losing his deaf sister had left a hole in him he didn't know how to fill until he saw the same loneliness in her children's eyes. He simply didn't want history to repeat itself. Liana realized something in that moment. Strength wasn't just about building empires, it was about allowing others in. Allowing healing. Allowing connection. Rowan had brought life back into her home, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like a mother, truly felt it in her bones. That evening, she invited him to stay for dinner with the triplets. It was awkward at first, but the children quickly pulled Rowan into their world, filling the house with silent laughter, expressive eyes, and the warm presence Liana had always dreamed of. She watched it unfold, remembering all the years she thought she was doing her best, until a janitor showed her what real presence looked like. As the sun set, painting the sky with gold and soft fire, Liana made a decision she had never considered before. She offered Rowan a new role, not as a janitor, but as the children's sign language tutor, with a salary that honored his impact. But more than that, she asked him to stay in their lives, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Rowan accepted with humble tears, and the triplets erupted in silent celebration. From that day forward, the mansion was no longer quiet. It was alive with hands moving in the air, laughter felt instead of heard, and a bond that grew stronger with every passing day. Liana learned that help sometimes walks quietly, wearing a simple uniform, carrying a heart big enough to change lives.